This episode of the VIP Collective Wedding and Wellness Podcast is brought to you by Scoria. Scoria is a Canadian company focused on offering environmentally sustainable, quality yoga equipment. They are also committed to giving a portion of their proceeds to safe education for Indigenous youth. Now, because you are a VIP listener, you can receive 10% off your purchase with the discount code Corinne10 linked in the bio below. Welcome back to the VIP Collective Wedding and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Corinne McDonald, and today we are welcoming a brand new face to the podcast. Jennifer Rossi from Moonstone Collective is stopping by to talk about meditation. Moonstone Collective offers Meditation Mondays, and when I thought about bringing this topic onto the podcast, she was the perfect person I thought that could speak about it. Today we are talking about the benefits of meditation, what it is exactly, when we can do it, how to do it, and what it does for us. This is an amazing episode for anyone who's considering meditation or is just curious about what exactly does it do. Now, if you like this episode, please feel free to hit like, comment, and subscribe. Now, if you're ready, let's go. Welcome back to the VIP Collective. I'm your host, Corinne McDonald, and today we are welcoming Jennifer Rossi to the podcast. She is the co-founder of Moonstone Collective. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm really excited to be sitting with you today. We are going to be talking about meditation, but before we even go anywhere near that, I would like you to intro what the Moonstone Collective is and why we're here today.
Yeah, for sure. So Moonstone Collective was created back in 2019. I was going through quite the dark night of the soul back then in February of that year and was diagnosed with breast cancer. As a young mom, you know, with a 9-month-old baby. And as you can imagine, it kind of turned my life upside down. And, you know, started going into my healing journey quickly after that. And my best friend, Ellie, and I, who you know very well, she was actually also going through sort of her own change in her life in terms of her relationship. And, you know, being best friends, we did what best friends do. We leaned on each other for support, and, you know, we were trying to be there for one another. And we both started heading down this sort of spiritual healing journey together and found a lot of comfort in attending women's circles, especially. So, you know, we were trying all of these modalities and Reiki and all of the things. But what we found was really profound and had a huge effect on both of us was being with other women and realizing that we're not alone. And even though they're not going through exactly the same thing that we're going through, we can all kind of relate to one another. And it was an opportunity to be vulnerable, to open up, to be seen and be heard. And shortly after that, we, you know, both coming from an event background, we thought, why not do this ourselves? Why not create, you know, we wanted more of it. We craved more of it. And we couldn't even, you know, couldn't possibly go to all of the circles. So we thought, why not create our own? And so Moonstone Collective was created shortly after that, in that same year, end of 2019. And our dream was to eventually host in-person, you know, retreats or destination retreats. And we had our first one in February of 2020. And then, as we all know, what happened right after that, we had to pivot into the digital world. And so we created, you know, a beautiful community that I think now we see as a blessing because we were able to reach so many more people via, you know, Zoom. And we created a lot of events, and we're still creating events to this day online. And one of those, which we'll talk about shortly, was our series on Meditated Mondays.
Amazing. Yeah. And so it sounds like it was just one of those things that kind of spoke to you. Like you went somewhere and then all of a sudden you were like, this is something that we could be doing. This is something we should be doing, right?
Totally.
One of those moments. I'm really big on moments and how moments can kind of put you in a new mindset, new perspective, and take you places that you don't
Yeah.
expect. If you listen to your intuition, listen to your gut, a lot of times that can happen. So congrats on well, a couple of years now, but
Yeah.
your collective. We're both collectives here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so today we are going to talk about meditation because I have been following along with the Moonstone Collective, and I always see you on Facebook and also doing the meditations and I've said this to you before and I'm saying it again because it's so true. I just feel you have such a beautiful presence with you and it's such a calming energy. And so when I decided that I wanted to move the podcast into a wellness space as well as weddings, I knew that I wanted to bring you on to talk about what you do so that other people could know there are places where they can go to, if they're interested in meditation or if they want to join like-minded people, that they can gather. So I'm really happy that we were able to connect and that we're able to host a podcast on this today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. This is
And
great.
I'm looking forward to it. So we are going to talk about meditation because I think even myself, so I'll give a bit of background, that I have never really been into meditation. I never understood it. When the pandemic hit, I think things changed perspective-wise, and even just our daily lives changed and what we were doing, and our routine changed. So there were a lot of shifts. And so I personally decided, you know what, I'm going to try this. And of course there were some, I can't get my mind quiet and those kind of things that a lot of times you hear. But when you stick to it, I think a lot of times magical things can happen. So I want to throw it over to you because I want to first just talk about what is meditation for anyone who's listening and is just like, what is it and why would I need to do it? So how do you define it?
So meditation is and can be so many different things, but I think ultimately it's a practice, just like yoga is a practice. And what it does is it allows us to quiet the mind and get in touch with our inner selves, our essence. It's opening ourselves up to receiving, but also letting go of that which doesn't serve us.
Mm-hmm.
And tapping into the present moment. And you might be thinking, okay, well, what does that mean, the present moment? But it's the mindfulness and awareness that comes in when we do that. And whether you're conscious of it or not, we tend to let our thoughts and our emotions control our reality a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And meditation, just like yoga, as I said, is great because it requires consistency, first of all. But when we do it, we create a ripple effect, and it actually translates into moments of our everyday lives. So it's not just creating an effect in the moment where we're sitting in silence and stillness, but we actually start to see the effects ripple out into our everyday moments. And that's where I think the real magic happens, when we're consistent with this practice. And yeah, over time, we can start to separate ourselves from our thoughts. We start to realize that our thoughts are not us. Those are just, they're exterior, and that gap becomes greater. And by doing that, we can become, less reactive. We could be more responsive versus reactive, which is going to improve a lot of areas of our lives, especially our relationships with others. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So
well, I love one thing that we talk about a lot is being present. And we've talked about this a few times on the podcast since the beginning of the podcast. And a lot of the advice that the vendors would give is be present on your wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
And even myself, because I wasn't practicing meditation at that point, was like, yes, be present. And in a sense, that's put your phone away. Number
Mm-hmm.
one is a good way to be present in all aspects of life. And number two, I think when you introduce the meditation side of things, you become present in the sense of you're present in your body as well.
Yes.
And you're not necessarily just present like, oh, my phone's gone and I'm listening to what you're saying. You're actually like, you're breathing in coherence with the rest of your body, I would say.
Yeah. 100%. And if we're not present, let's put it in that perspective for a second. If we're not present, we're focused on something that happened in the past or something that might be happening in the future, we're allowing life to go by without actually basking in the beauty and all the magic that we have available to us. So, there's a lot of thought around for example, the emotions, depression is said to be people who are focused about things that happen, or ruminate rather, on things that happened in the past. And people who have more anxiety tend to worry about things that could happen in the future. And those emotions are valid, and we should definitely address them, but they shouldn't be our constant. They shouldn't be our constant state. We should really try to get to that present moment if we want to live fulfilling, happy, joyful lives, which I think we can all say we all want.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I had heard, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bob Proctor, but I did hear something he said where he was referencing an hourglass. And so he said, the bottom of the hourglass is your past, and the top of your hourglass is your future. And the middle, that tiny gap where the sand flows through, is your present moment. Yeah. And so that's all we have, is this exact moment that we have at this very second. And so if you spend so much time in the past or try and predict the future, you're actually missing out on exactly this moment. Yeah. And when I heard that, and when I saw him, he was holding the hourglass and kind of shared that. And I was like, I found it very powerful, because I just, you don't think of time that way. A lot of times we just think we have time. Like there's tonight at 5 p.m. is going to come. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. is going to come. And fingers crossed it does. But it's all about, being just present. This is what we have now. So that's, I think, what meditation does really open up for people. How long do you think it takes to really start getting the practice?
I think it depends on what your practice looks like. And, for our series, Meditative Mondays, what it is it's more of an exploration into sort of demystifying what it means to meditate. So we want people to be open to many different styles, techniques, and modalities within meditation, because it can be so many different things. It can be, sitting in lotus position and chanting Om. It can be that for, an hour, but it can also be a simple breathwork technique. And I think that's kind of why we started this series, was to really see that there's a type and form of meditation for everyone, and to just get curious and explore. So I think depending on what you're doing in terms of your meditation practice, you'll start to see results fairly quickly. I can give myself as an example. When I started, I was doing about 20 minutes a day. Keep in mind, this was, I was in kind of a desperate state. I, had just been diagnosed with a very serious illness, and I was trying to do anything and everything I could. So 20 minutes a day in the mornings. And I think about after a month of doing this, I started to see the effects, like I said, ripple out into my everyday life. And that's where I think, again, the magic happens. For me, it was a moment that I became responsive versus reactive in a situation that was common, that had happened before. And what it was for me was I'm a dreamer, and I tend to kind of go off on in a daydream. And I tend to do this a lot, which is probably not a great thing, at red lights when I'm driving.
Right.
So in the past, what had happened a handful of times was I would kind of go off on a daze, and the car behind me, the light would turn green and the car behind me would honk. And I immediately would get this surge through my body of complete, anxiety and fear. And I would slam on the gas, which is not safe, first of all. But I was in that reactive state doing that, right? And when I noticed the shift for the first time, it was being in this moment where, again, I, drifted off, and the person behind me honked. And instead of that reaction, which I had had many times before, not too many, but many times before, I stopped and I looked around me, and I was just, it brought me back to the moment. And I was then able to move forward safely and, with more calm and more grace, and not worry about what that other person was thinking about me not, going the second that the light turned green. It was like, okay, well, now I'm here. Thanks for the reminder. I'm going to go now, and it was, sounds like such a simple moment, but I think that's where I really started to realize, okay, something's happening here with this meditation thing.
Do you think being mindful and being present are the same thing?
I think they definitely overlap. I think being mindful can be taken into any situation. It's just being, again, present with what's happening in front of you and not thinking about what happened yesterday or what you have to make for dinner, and taking you away from what's happening in front of you.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think there is quite an overlap. I think it just depends on the context that you're using the words, but yeah.
Right. So if someone, like you had mentioned, starting a practice maybe 20 minutes in the morning was how you started, I think you said 20
That's
minutes.
how I started. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for majority of, my own clients, I tend to say if you're just starting, having never meditated before a day in your
Mhm.
life, not knowing what to do, I would say start small and be
Mhm.
consistent is better
Mm.
than, meditating every weekend for 20 minutes. I would say start every day with 5 minutes or 10 if you can. And just give it a good go, before throwing in the towel, because a lot of people will try it one or two times. They'll start to get thoughts come in, and then they'll start to create these beliefs that they're not the type of person who's cut out for meditation, or this is just not for me.
Mhm.
But in reality, there's so many ways that you can practice this. You can just do a simple breath work technique. My husband, for example, is one of those people who he's like, I will not sit still for 10 minutes, not even 5. He won't. And what he does in the morning is just a simple breath work. He sits on the end of the bed as soon as he, crawls out of bed, and he puts his hands on certain chakras on his body, intuitively, by the way.
Mhm.
And he does about like a minute or so of breathing, and that's his meditation every day. So if that's all you do, then and he has, by the way, seen a huge shift. It took him a bit longer, but I think after a few months he started to really notice a difference, and I did too. So
So
yeah.
even, yeah, like I think even like a 5 minute or 3 minute practice or
Yeah.
anything, I guess anything that's really putting you in more of a present state
Yes.
would
Yeah.
work. And then do you recommend like people having something to listen to as well when they're doing it?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're drawn to, and I also think it's good to experiment and to explore different tools that can help with your practice. So music is a great one. If you want to just put on, maybe you make a playlist that you have for your
Mhm.
meditation, and you just put that on and get quiet and close your eyes, and just see what comes to the surface. Other times, silence is really great too.
Mhm.
So I would say experiment with both, and see what works and what doesn't. Again, giving it a fair chance. But I think what's really good for, like, regardless of what type or style of meditation you want to try, is really getting to know the breath and the power of the breath. I think that goes for probably every meditation I've ever experimented with, is just knowing that your breath is there to center you and kind of keeping that as a home base. And if we have like a little bit of time, I can do a quick example of how to do
Absolutely.
that.
Let's do it. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one technique that I love that's super simple and anyone can do it is called box breathing. So
Okay.
if you imagine a square right in front of you,
Mhm.
what we're going to do, and you can start this as a fairly low count, especially if you're finding yourself in a moment of kind of panic or anxiety, and you need this as a practice or a tool to kind of get you back to center. Start with a short amount of breaths. So let's do like a 4 count, for example.
Okay.
So picture again this square. We're going to start at the bottom corner, doesn't matter which side, and you're going to inhale as you go up the side for a count of 4. So we're going to inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to hold our breath for a count of 4 as we move along the top.
Mm.
2, 3, 4. And then we're going to exhale for a count of 4. 2, 3, 4. And then hold it again at the bottom. 2, 3, 4. So
Mm.
you're going to go around that square, and
Yeah.
you can do this, I say, like 3 to 5 times of doing this. You'll notice a shift immediately in your
Now, do
body.
you recommend in through the nose, out through the mouth, or
Yes.
okay?
So
I think that's where I messed up.
I think for Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. Sometimes these things get a
No,
little
I wasn't sure if that was
routine
right.
for me.
But
But
yeah.
you can absolutely go through your mouth when you're exhaling, especially if
Right.
you're in a moment of, like I said, anxiety or something's really triggering you, and you need to feel that calm in your body again. You can let it out as a sigh, and that's really helpful. But I think eventually the goal is to get it back to your nose. So you're wanting to close your mouth and inhale and exhale both in and out through the nose,
Right.
because it acts as a filter to the body as well too.
What I love about that practice as well is, and I mean, a lot of people who are listening are either planning a wedding or they're in the wedding industry.
Mhm.
And so it's a high stress industry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of decisions that have to be made, and it's also fast paced, especially on the day of. So I think even little tricks like this that you
Mhm.
can take into a wedding day or into any, it doesn't even have to be a wedding day. It can just be, a moment that you all of a sudden are feeling overwhelmed, and you can do just a little bit of breath work. Maybe like you could take yourself to the washroom just to do that,
Yes, yeah,
right?
exactly. That's what I usually say to my clients is like, excuse yourself for 5 minutes, go to the
Right.
washroom, do this install. No one has to even know you're doing it if you're, embarrassed or whatever about it. But it's really helpful to just calm your nerves in the moment. And it really is like, if you try it now, like it's really impactful to do 2 or 3 rounds of it. And, starting with a count like 4 is great, again, in those high stress moments. But
Hmm.
if you're doing this, as you wake up every morning, if this is something you want to incorporate as a practice, or maybe in the shower every day,
Hmm.
you can try a little bit longer. So you can do that count for a count of 5 or 6, or even up to 8 counts.
So as you're meditating, are you able, if you're sitting and meditating, you would do this breath work with your meditation?
Yeah, you could do it as a way to kick off your meditation or
Mm.
to end off your meditation. Again, it's really about trial and error and seeing what works for you, and getting curious. I like to do it, in the shower. That's just something that I've kind of attached as like a habit stacking tool for myself.
Mm.
And what I mean by habit stacking is, you attach a practice to an already existing practice to make sure that you can install it basically into your system for living.
I love that. I love habit stacking.
Yeah, me too.
So I do want to ask, because I've always been curious about the sitting versus laying down for meditation.
Yeah. So there is, like, obviously, like everything, there are, it's debatable whether to
Hmm.
sit or to lie down. It's also debatable what type of meditation is better than the other. I like to keep a very open-minded philosophy, to be open to, all schools of thought on meditation. And I think it really just depends on yourself, first of all, what you're going through in the moment. So, like with everything, I like to tap into your intuition as much as possible. So, before you meditate, whatever way you're going to meditate, I would say set an intention for that meditation. What is it that you want to either release, or what emotion do you want to bring to the surface, or calm or anxiety or whatever it may be, and then really see where you're at in terms of physically, like your energy physically. So I tend to say, if you're on the verge of falling asleep, it's probably not good to lie down. You
Hmm.
probably will still get a little bit of the effects, but you do want to be conscious in
Right.
meditation. You don't want to be unconscious. So if you're going to do this at night, for example, if you're going to meditate at night, I would say maybe try to sit up doing it.
Hmm.
um, and we tend to say keeping a straight spine is helpful, because it helps the chi, or the life force energy, move through your chakra system,
Hmm.
which is helpful if you know anything about energy. But I think even, there are people with back problems, let's say, that just doesn't work for them to sit upright. And so I don't think that should be a reason not to meditate. I think finding something that works for you is superior to, the way in which you do it.
Even
Um,
back against a wall?
Yes, yeah. So that's what I was just going to mention is, if
Mm.
you have a hard time just keeping a straight spine and you want to be seated, you can either put a pillow under your bum, or you can put yourself against a wall or the back of a chair if you have a really good straight back chair.
Mhm.
Those are all good practices to meditate as well. Yeah.
What about meditating with like sounds of the ocean?
Yeah, you
Or
can totally do that. You can use that to mimic the sound of your breath, to be still. Yeah,
I guess the
definitely.
beauty of it is that you get to personalize it for
Yeah.
what works for you, right? Like there is not really a right or wrong, essentially. Is that right?
Yeah, that's totally the message. That's kind of the message I want to, send to our community whenever we do these meditation practices together is you find what works for you and do it. Just be consistent with it. And if, after a certain amount of time, let's say you do the same type of practice or you use the same app for, a month or 2 months and you're finding yourself getting a little bit bored of it or, feeling stagnant, then change it up, add something else, try something new. Our body craves change. Our body craves movement, and we can't just stay in the same routine constantly. We need to tweak here and there. Over the years that I've been meditating, I have tweaked my practice. I couldn't even tell you how many times. And I'm still always looking for new meditation challenges to participate in, like Deepak Chopra, for example. He does these great 21-day practices, and he teams up with, Oprah, or he just did one with Alicia Keys. And they're great because they keep you accountable to doing this and finding, again, new ways to be guided through it.
Love it. Now, I do want to ask, and kind of going back to you practicing meditation in the shower, because that works for you. So some of the people that may be listening that are restricted on time or have big families, what else, if they can't find the time to sit for 20 minutes, what else or how else can they meditate?
Yeah. So again, with the habit stacking, it's finding things that you already do on a daily basis and attaching a meditation practice to that. So it could even be like while you're brushing your teeth, you're just centering and putting your hand maybe on your stomach or your heart and taking a deep intentional breath right before you brush your teeth or right after you brush your teeth. Again, and the shower is a great one. If you're, having to leave your shampoo in your hair or your conditioner in your hair for a certain amount, some bottles will recommend like leave it in for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. That's a good opportunity right there to just center and take some breaths.
Now, would you have your eyes closed? Like, are you kind of?
Yeah, you can. I mean, with the eyes closing versus not closing, that's another interesting debate too, because a lot of people say you have to close your eyes. But you can do things like walking meditation as well, which I hope you would have your eyes open for, especially if you're outside where there's a lot of cars and things like that. But
get dangerous.
Yeah. Unless you're in like a field where there's no barriers, then maybe go for it. But you can definitely meditate with your eyes open as well. It's all about softening the gaze and just not being distracted by what's around you, but just being present with where your body is. Yeah.
Would it be listening to sounds as well? Like if you were in the forest or something and you were kind of walking through, like softening your gaze and being more present that way, or would it be breath or both?
So you can do both. Yeah. And noticing. So when we're mindful of thoughts that come in or sounds that are happening around us, it's easy for our ego to be like, oh, it messed up our meditation, because we think it has to be so perfect and silent and no thoughts. And we have to be in this kind of like white haze of a state. But that's just not true. Even if, you're meditating for decades on a mountaintop somewhere, you're still going to have thoughts come in. And I think that's the whole point of meditation is having those opportunities to separate yourself from the thoughts. So it's almost, I would argue, you almost see more of a shift in the beginning of your meditation practice, like if you're someone new meditating, because it's the first time you've done this. It's the first time you've really started to see your thoughts as separate from yourself. So you therefore see a bigger shift right off the get-go. Whereas, over time, it might seem like not a lot of change is happening, but again, stay consistent and just trust that there is benefit to doing this.
I did hear another trick in the event. So I've been doing a lot of more of the silent meditations. And so in the event that thoughts or agendas or, I need to send an email, I need to go here, those things come into play. A lot of times you just can pick up on the sounds that are around you and bring yourself back. So if you hear a bus go by, if you hear a siren, if you're in Toronto, you'll probably hear a siren. If you have an air conditioner on, like the smallest little sound that will catch your attention, then brings you back to this, like, okay, remove that, because that's not what we're doing right now. We're being focused just on yourself. And I thought that was a really handy tip, because a lot of times it's really easy to have those thoughts come in when you have time to yourself.
Yeah, it
Right?
really is. Yeah. And that's again just another tool to bring you back to like what I call home base. So using sound is another home base, using your breath as a home base. And then a lot of people like using mantras or, affirmations to say on repeat as their home base. So yeah, it just, again, is all about exploration and seeing what works for you and not being afraid to try different modalities and different techniques.
That's what I think is so amazing about it, is just it gives you the space to be creative in the way that you want to ground yourself and become more present.
Yeah.
So that alone it's not like you can get it right or wrong. So that helps to begin to eliminate excuses, because, I very much am practicing that I do not live by excuses. so,
Yeah, very
so
much.
it's a good way to start to eliminate those. And the benefits as well. I think one of the things that I've seen, one of the shifts that I've seen myself, is just being present, and it makes you mindful elsewhere, like
Mhm.
other places in your life. You are mindful, but also and I don't know, I've misplaced things before,
Mhm.
and I find them so much faster now, if that's the
Yeah.
case. And
Because
it's,
you're releasing some of that like brain fog, right?
yes,
Yeah.
it's just gaining a whole other level of clarity. And I think as business owners and as anyone who's planning something, and there's a lot of different energies that we deal with on a daily basis, or that we're, what's the word? I don't want to say exposed, but that we're around
Yeah.
on a daily basis. And I think that even taking that time to be on your own, right, and understanding which energies are yours, is also really important.
And that's actually a good point. That's actually the reason why meditation came into my life, or why it stuck around in my life, is because at the beginning of my healing journey, it was all about the physical changes I was making. And I almost went into um, like an obsessive mode of, okay, I got to change this. I got to not eat this. I have to,
Right.
work out in this way, and I have to detox my whole life and all the products and all of that. But I didn't realize that by doing that, I was actually probably causing more issue with my life, because I was in a constant state of stress that if I didn't do this perfectly, then I could possibly be impacting my health and my future, right? And so meditation came in, as the universe would have it, just kind of happened to come into my awareness. And I tried it, and at first I fell in love with the practice, because it was the first time I had taken the time for myself. And for me, it was doing it in the morning, and it still is doing it in the morning before the house is awake. It's more about, for me, just taking the time for me than what is actually happening, because I'm able to just sit with myself and ask myself what it is that I need, and just kind of surrender the rest to the universe, or whatever you resonate with, God, and source, spirit. But it's really become more of a spiritual practice for me that I didn't really expect it to be, but it has opened me up in ways that I didn't realize. Yeah.
Have you ever missed a day and then felt the implications of that?
Yes. And I will say something really quickly on that too, because I think it's important. Because I think in the wellness kind of arena, we focus so much on like everything being perfect, and like, oh, your diet has to look this way, and this has to look this way, and even in meditation, you have to do it every day for this. But I think it's important to show yourself compassion. Number one, that things happen, life happens, and it's best that we adapt and can be in flow with what's going on in our lives. But a really interesting sort of tip that I learned about from Vishen Lakhiani from Mind Valley. He wrote an amazing book called Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and he calls it set points. And what he means by that is, whether it's a workout regime or with meditation, it's having like a lowest common denominator, I guess you want to call it, or a lowest expectation for what you can do every day. So let's say you're starting out with meditation and you're, a little bit overwhelmed with creating this practice. What's the shortest amount of time that you can commit to without fail? Like, okay, 2 minutes is something I know for sure I can do every day. Commit to that 2 minutes as your set point. And then maybe you want your constant to be, 10 minutes a day. So you would do 10 minutes a day. And then on the days where something comes up, just do those 2 minutes and know that you didn't miss it, right? You were consistent with it. And he says on the days that you can't even do the 2 minutes or you didn't do the 2 minutes, what you're then going to do is allow yourself the opportunity for growth. So now your set point is going to increase slightly, not too much, but maybe instead of 2 minutes, your set point is now 3 minutes. So it just allows you to come back. I thought that was so powerful, and it's something that I've implemented in my own, rituals and routines.
That's amazing. So you basically, you set the bar at a certain standard for yourself, but then if for some reason you can't hold that, you've still given yourself even just the tiniest bit so that you can still be proud
you
of
still feel like you accomplished your goals, right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to be discouraged afterwards and set yourself on that, spiral. Yeah.
An interesting thing that I have found as well is that when you do make it a constant practice and then you do miss a day because of maybe for some reason you just didn't do it and you are mindful of how you feel that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I don't want to do that again. So I'm going to make sure I get back on my practice. It's the same thing with working out. It's the same thing that I find, like as soon as if I miss a day of working out, I don't feel as good.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I know how I like to feel, and I'd rather work out or I'd rather meditate, both, so that I'm able to have the best days possible. But it really is a mind shift. And once you get those, and I think maybe 21 days is the sweet spot. I don't know the science behind that, so I can't really speak to that, but I think there is something about creating habit within those 21 days.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on who you talk to. But I've heard 21 days, and then I've also heard Robin Sharma talks about 66 days.
Right, 66.
Yeah.
I thought I've heard 90 as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just depends. But I think if you're consistent, you're doing it every day, then you're going to see the shift. I don't think there's a magic day for anybody. I think it'll depend on what you're going through. It'll depend on your practice and what that looks like. But I think there's a certain amount of surrender and trust in it too, that you just have to know that this is benefiting you in some way. In most cases, many ways, it's benefiting your life, which is great. But yeah, I notice for the days that, for whatever reason I can't or don't meditate, I definitely notice my reactivity is a little bit heightened, especially with my daughter. And, for me, because I meditate in the morning, and I meditate several other times, like I mentioned, I do a short one in the shower as well. When I wake up in a state of reactivity, so my daughter, let's say, wakes me up because she's crying,
right.
I tend to be so much more reactive throughout my day. And then if I wake up proactively, because I choose to wake up and do my morning ritual and practice, I can just be so much more responsive to everything that happens and more present too.
Right.
It's incredible, like what one day can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point too, just because we haven't really touched on the relationship aspect of it. But if you have a partner and maybe they do something that puts you on edge a little bit, or it's a bit of a trigger for you. I think that, and from what you've said, like, I think being able to just remove yourself, even to do the breath work or something, will help you in your relationships.
And I think even for those that are planning weddings and, in the events world as well, this is something, I mean, I was in the events world. I wish I knew these techniques back then, because, whether it's a client that's triggering you or, kind of getting in your way as you're, in your flow, which I'm sure like in the events industry, everyone can relate to, or it's somebody that is a team member that you're just not jiving with for whatever reason. Setting yourself aside, going to the washroom or wherever to take those few breaths can really put things in perspective for you. And it's pretty incredible.
It is incredible. If you stick with it, you'll really see the benefits moving forward. But it takes time, just like everything. Unfortunately, there isn't that, magic pill that happens, that limitless pill, like that movie with Bradley Cooper.
Yes, I love that movie.
Yeah, it's so good. But if you do stick with it, benefits start to come. The rewards show up.
Yeah, they do.
So we've learned intention setting. We've learned a lot today, actually. I'm taking a lot from you.
Good, I'm glad.
It's really nice to know. And I think one of the biggest surprises that I had in starting to understand meditation is the fact that you can do it when you're walking or when you're in the shower, like you said, or if you're brushing your teeth, and just taking that time to be present. I think you don't realize that, because when you see meditation or you hear about it, people are always sitting, or they might be chanting, and people may not think that, oh, that's not for me. But when you start to understand a little bit more about it, which was the goal for this podcast, being present and allowing yourself to be present in all aspects of your life, it really, really is a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what you'll find too is, especially if you're just doing short little spurts of meditation, whether it's walking or, like I said, in the shower, that technique, you're gonna want more. You're gonna crave more, because you start to see the benefits over time, and you're like, okay, if only 3 minutes did this, what would 10 minutes do, right? What would 20 minutes do? And that's what happened to me. And now it's, some days, again, my set point is fairly low. It's around 10 minutes. And then some days it's 20, 40, even longer. And those days are incredible. The longest experience I had, which I ended up going into another complete other world. I meditated for 2 hours unknowingly. And I didn't come out of it until my daughter started waking up and yelling for me. And then I looked at the clock, and I thought my phone was broken, because I didn't realize that I had been meditating for 2 hours. It only seemed like about half an hour.
Wow.
So those moments are, they're rare, but they're really, really cool when they happen. Yeah.
That's amazing. What time would that been in the morning?
Yeah, it was in the morning. I wake up really early at 5 a.m. So.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. Mornings are very important to me. Yeah.
They're very important, and they just set the day. And if there's an opportunity to put that meditation first thing, it's a complete game changer. Definitely.
Really. Yeah, it is.
Well, Jennifer, I appreciate you taking time to sit in today and bring all your knowledge about meditation and just the impact it can have. I think it's fantastic, and I really appreciate it. And I want to ask you where people find you if they want to join your Meditative Mondays.
Yeah, for sure. So we have on Instagram, you can find us at Moonstone Collective Wellness. And then we also have a private Facebook group, which I know you're a part of, and we share our events through there as well. And that's Moonstone Collective on Facebook as well. Which is all linked through our Instagrams as well. And we do lots of different events. We host other guest experts within all the areas of wellness. So we don't just focus on meditation. If you're still really like, oh, I don't know about meditation and the whole vibe, we do everything from nutrition to, different healing modalities and energy techniques and things like that. We just want to raise the awareness of what's possible and what's out there for everybody.
I did see you had hosted a conscious cooking class.
Yeah.
And that one, I'm definitely waiting for that one to come around again.
Yeah, we will be doing that again for sure, because it was really well received. Yeah.
Amazing. And then do you anticipate events coming into the end of this year, do you think?
Oh yeah, we usually do at least once a month, an event once a month. And then we host, as well as in addition to our Meditative Mondays, the first Monday of every month, we host a circle called Her Story, and it's a little bit more about sharing, and we use different journal prompts and things like that, but it's kind of bringing that women's circle that started Moonstone Collective back to our community, because it's very powerful when women gather.
It is. And I want to say thank you, Moonstone Collective, for joining the VIP Collective today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate your time, and I hope to see you back very soon.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
All right, that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to leave a comment below. Do you meditate? And if so, what do you find is the biggest benefit that you've learned from meditation? As always, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week on the VIP Collective.